Hey, is this Chris?
Hey, how's it going? Yep.
Hey, how's it going, man?
Good. What's happening? Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you fine. I just want to make sure you're coming through the. Looks like you're coming through and everything. Yeah. Do you like to be called Chris or Christopher?
Either way.
Cool. Yeah, I want to say thank you for doing this. We've been talking since the summer, I believe it was, but life is pretty crazy, especially nowadays. But yeah, I want to just ask you a few questions and just kind of get to know you a little bit. So I know you mostly for being a part of Halloween H2O as Michael Myers and doing stunt for Scream 2 as Ghostface. So I started doing a little bit more research on you, and you've actually done a lot of great stuff. So, you've been doing this since the late '80s. What kind of gravitated you towards doing stunts instead of like full time acting?
I was probably about the shyest kid in the entire world. So the fact that I'm in this business at all sometimes astounds me. Um, but I was also, the kid who played all the time and just loved to do physical things. And as I got older, I realized it was actually a job that did that. So I kind of, for lack of a better term, I fell into it. Um, real, Realized it was something I could do there and pursued it. But boy, I was coming from left field. I mean, I had no connections to the business at all. So it was a tough ride to get in.
So how did you get in? Like, what was the steps on that? Like how did you fall into place to get it, like the opportunity to start your career as a stuntman?
Well, let's see. I have a background in martial arts and rock climbing,
Nice.
and I started doing gymnastics when I was 18 and already 6'2". And I told the coach at the school I was going to, I called him up, said I want to tumble, and he said, okay, have you ever done it? I said, no. And he said, how tall are you? I said, 6'2", and he laughed at me. And then I think he let me come in because I was just persistent. And I was persistent to the point that, he figured, okay, this guy will come in, he'll quit in 2 days, whatever. It'll be great, and I wouldn't leave. I was just stubborn. So I ended up with the background that, I kind of set myself on that path with the background that shit what you needed to do for stunts. And then a good friend of mine got started. His mom was a big actress, and they knew some people. And he got started, and he was a phenomenal martial artist. And he got a couple of jobs. And so I started learning a little bit about how you could approach people. And quite literally, we went out and hustled. We would find where people were filming and show up and find who the stunt coordinator was and introduce yourself and try to get your name out there and get to know people.
That's crazy. So this all started. So according to IMDb, because I did want to do some research before we did this. So your first stunt credit was 1988. So when would you say would be the initial start of when this became? Was it like a year prior, right before, a couple years?
Well, I started working with a guy named Kenny Bates, who was just up and coming at the time. Who since went on to do massive movies as a coordinator. And because I had a climbing background, I was rigging with him. And so he had done a show way back with Dar Robinson where they did a fall on a cable, an 8-inch cable, backwards. And, there's no pad below, and you can see it's a shot from above. And it's called the decelerator. And so he'd kind of developed this through time. And it was really his invention. And I started rigging with him because of my background. And I rigged with him and was on set and learning the ropes, so to speak, and working, behind the scenes more, but in the right kind of avenue. And through time, they found a slot for me. And I think my first job was a horror movie of all things called Cameron's Closet.
Nice.
Made a deal, got in the Screen Actors Guild, and worked all week and had a bunch of fun, and then had to keep moving and keep trying to find the next gig and the next gig and the next gig, and it's a rough road. By the time you succeed in stunts, you can be a doctor.
So it sounds like you definitely busted ass to get where you are today, and you have a lot of credits, man, like a lot. And what's crazy is because like I said at the beginning of the call, I've known you as being part of Halloween H2O and Scream 2, and then I started looking into it, and you've done The Crow, Captain America, The Winter Soldier, was it Armageddon, like so many Resident Evil, Extinction, like a lot of these films, and I had no idea, and it just kind of like made me appreciate you as a stunt, a stunt person even more because you've been a part of some really good films, and some important films that I've grown up watching. Like The Crow is one of my favorite movies of all time. But what is some of your? Oh yeah, it's amazing. So actually, before I get to my next question, did you get to interact with Brandon Lee?
Yeah, no, for sure. I was there the week before. We did the big shootout scene with the long conference table with all the bad guys around it.
Mm-hmm.
And they actually cut out a bunch of that, at least in the original release. I've never seen it again. But when the fight starts, everybody kind of scatters. And he starts reciting a poem, and he gets about 2 lines in and then starts, has about 3 people he takes out. He keeps sneaking around the corner reciting the poem, and the next bit, it was really cool. It was a very neat scene, very dark, and it fit that character because it's a poetry basis for that character. But I was there actually exactly kind of from the vein that I started was I set up a big cable fall, and I actually set up a cable fall for myself. And I get shot back through the windows, and I do a backwards fall about 50 feet into a dance floor of people. And stop about 4 feet off the ground. So shooting mini-max all the way down. So through the glass, shooting mini-max and falling backwards.
That's crazy.
I was there the week before the accident, and we had, I think, 19 people shooting guns almost every day in unison, no problems, shell casings flying everywhere, totally safe. And I had gone home, and like 5 or 6 days later, I heard what happened. So that was tragic. I'd worked with him once before as well. Can't think of the movie now. But yeah, he was a nice guy. I'd worked with him then. And it's funny because I have my martial arts background is largely in Filipino martial arts, is Kali, and Wing Chun, which is Chinese. But Danny Inosanto was associate of Bruce Lee's, and he taught him how to use nunchucks and all of that stuff early on, which became iconic for him, and they were pals, and so I had trained in all the same stuff that Brandon had, so it was kind of cool to kind of circle back and cross paths that way. It was really neat.
Yeah, amazing actor. Man, that was crazy. Now, so what are some of your favorite experiences? I mean, you've been doing this for quite some time, but what are some of the most memorable, or may I say, what things stick out the most to you from, because you've done a lot of things, but like which experiences would you say has left a lasting impression on you even today?
Well, I mean, there's various films that affect you in completely different ways. A lot of the big stuff I did early on was on smaller films that people probably didn't see as much, and now it's coming to the mainstream with a lot of the action pictures. But I did I did a flight to life off the top of Hoover Dam as part of this sequence. So you're 600 feet in the air and literally went state to state, and I was on the face of the dam for about 8 days. And so kind of what goes into that and the camaraderie that goes into pulling that off safely and being smart about it. Because this isn't Daredevil stuff. It never was, never meant to be. It's all about the illusion and making a movie and, try to keep your ego out of it and be fine to work the next day.
Right.
These days you take your lumps and then the rest of it is you're trying to outsmart it.
Right, absolutely.
Come on, movies are an illusion. So
exactly.
The dumbest thing is to get your ego involved. And then if we turn and look at like a different experience, saying something like Halloween, well, let me back up. Let me go before that. And first kind of things when I'm working, and like I said, I was a really shy kid. And I was the last kid who wanted to get up and, speak in front of everybody. And I kind of made myself do that in high school.
Hmm.
I signed up for drama because I knew I was shy, if that makes any sense. Um, intellectually, I knew it was dumb. I mean, what an absolutely useless attribute that gets you nowhere. And I knew that, and so I kind of made myself get over it. But still, going into this business, I mean, what ends up happening is you just don't have time for it. When you're working, you just don't have time for it. So everybody's on your side on the set, and I had kind of early things or early roles that I did, you know, and they're a little bit numbing because you're completely off balance and thinking, man, you know, I don't I don't want to be the center of attention this way. This isn't kind of what I signed up for in that regard. And you got to do it. And you pull it off, and then you realize it's a new challenge, and it's really kind of fun. And it's not a big deal. And like I said, everyone there is on your side. They all want you to succeed. Excuse me. And that was a big kind of eye-opener that, you know, you realize it's a teamwork thing, just like in Stunts. And then realizing that you just don't have the luxury to be shy or to worry about that. You're working, you're busy, right? So you've got to figure that stuff out. And so I did early on. And as things got a little bit bigger sometimes, I would draw on other times when I, you know, was in probably the premier seat to be in, where you're on set, behind camera, watching the best of the best in the world who've been hired to do this, do a scene. And I'm not only watching them work, but I'm watching how it's being filmed. And then I get to see how it turned out. So that's the best film school in the world, both for acting and for making films. Now, I was in, you know, literally in the line of fire with all of this. And there's a couple of people that I remember watching where you just go, man, they just dug deep from somewhere and brought this scene, or they played it so quietly. And then the way it reads on screen is so powerful. So, you know, I got a good education in the old school sense. You know, I was thrown into the in front of the train and had to kind of survive, right?
Right, no, exactly. So yeah, this all makes sense now. So you kind of gone into stunt work because you didn't want to necessarily have the cameras on your face. You're kind of one of those people who don't want to be in front of the camera. Like you said, you're shy. You don't want to be in front of the classroom. So this kind of makes sense now. So with that being said, for the role of Ghostface and Michael Myers, you're wearing a mask, but you're in front of the screen. So especially as Michael Myers, was
Right.
that any different for you in comparison to scenes?
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
Well, yeah, no, absolutely. Because here's the thing. I quickly got over being shy and worrying about it, and really worked to figure out how to pull off roles and to relax and to just be and all of this. But now you put on a mask, and now you got nothing. All those things you worked on, gone. So what do you do if you're Michael? All right? You've got a mask. You might see your eyes, maybe. You've got no dialogue, no facial expression. It's just physical. But if I just put on the mask and the suit and walk down the hallway, I'm just some schmuck in a mask. So you have to do something more than that. And you may have seen this out there, but I landed finally upon the intent of the character somehow reads on film. And so I had to have an intent and an intensity that went with that every time I did something, or it was just going to fall flat. You know, the mask in the persona is scary to a degree.
Right.
The lighting makes it better. The music makes it better. The people around you make it better. But that final touch, you better bring it. And I did not watch any of the other films, so I was really happily in the dark when I went into it. But I had to figure out on my own, what am I going to do with this guy? And what I landed on was being a predator, just a big cat. And if you've ever seen a tiger lock on prey, it's frightening. And there's a singularity to their purpose, and you can't shake them. And so that's what I did, is I would lock on whoever I was chasing, or whatever my target was at that moment, and that was it. I was kind of like the Energizer Bunny of boogeymen. I'm coming. I'm not in a hurry. So I had to have that in there. It's like, I'm coming for you. I'm not in a hurry because I'm going to get you. And there's nothing you can do about it. But I'm coming with a little bit of power behind it. It's not just, I'm not, it's not casual like I'll get there. It's like, no, I'm coming for you right now and you're screwed. So that's kind of what I landed on with this whole thing. And really the only thing that Steve Miner ever told me or showed me from the original stuff was the head tilt and the closet scene, because we overlapped the closet. Other than that, I've never seen it. And I can tell you the story if you want to hear that. But
yeah, absolutely.
When I went into the audition, as I understood it, they had looked at about 100 actors and didn't like anybody, and then said this is traditionally played by a stunt guy because it's a physical role. And so Donna Keegan, who doubled Jamie, was actually the one running the show. She was the coordinator. And so I knew her from earlier jobs, and she knew what I could do. Now, she sent 5 of us in. She said, I'm not doing a cattle call. I'll give you 5 guys. That's it. They're all qualified. Pick one. And I went in and just met with Steve and the first AD. And while we were sitting there chatting about a few things, they'd asked me a few questions. And then they were kind of had an aside moment to themselves where they were saying, well, we're not going to do what came before. Well, one of the tricks with auditions is if you go in and you have sides to read, that's your printed pages for the script, if you don't know. They'll give you sides, but usually there's a bunch of extra material that's crossed out. Read the crossed out material, because it might pertain to what you're doing in that scene. So get every clue you can. So when these guys are speaking, I filed it away. Okay? They tell me a bit later that I got the job, and I went, oh, great, cool, awesome. Well, we're not doing what came before, so why would I watch anything? We're not doing that. So we're going to do what we're going to do, so forget about it. And I went in completely blind, which ended up being entirely to my advantage because I never second-guessed myself. I just did what I thought was right.
Right.
And like I said, the couple of critical scenes that were overlapped, the head tilt, they showed it to me and said, this is kind of this character, it's part of this. I went, okay, cool. Other than that, I did what I thought was right. And pretty much in this business, no news is good news. So when nobody's complaining, you're nailing it. And so I just kept going. And Steve kind of let me do what I thought was right and let me do what I wanted. And if there was something specific we needed, he would tell me. There's obviously blocking issues and things you've got to get with the camera and et cetera, et cetera. But other than technical stuff, he just let me play it how I thought I should. And that's what the result was. So it ended up working out pretty well.
So that was your choice ultimately to not watch anything prior, just create your own kind of mystique to the character?
Well, we weren't going to do what came before, so why bother?
That makes sense.
Well, I mean, because otherwise you start mimicking, and I didn't want to mimic because, again, if you want it to be real, you got to find the character. Mimicking somebody is the biggest danger of just doing a surface job, and I didn't want to do a surface job on it. You wanted to really find it. And so in order to do that, it actually helped me not to see anybody else and try to say, well, maybe I should play it like this, or maybe I should play it like that, and you start second-guessing yourself.
Right.
Another thing that happened to me is I didn't bother, and I never second-guessed myself.
Okay, that makes sense. This might be a question I don't know if you have the answer for. I don't know if you've been asked this before, but since you didn't watch the movies prior, in Halloween 2, the room gets blown up and he's burned to a crisp essentially. Well, he didn't, but do you know any of the backstory of why he didn't return in H2O with burn marks on him?
I don't. I just know that the main discussion, and this goes back to that meeting when I heard them speaking, it was my misunderstanding of what they were saying that benefited me, because what they really meant was that they were not going to reference any of the movies that came between. That this was going to be the third in the trilogy. And I I got the we're not going to do what came before and went, great, I'm done. That's not what they meant. But to answer your question, no, I don't know why.
Interesting. So, Halloween Resurrection came out in 2002, and I know you weren't a part of that. I mean, Brad, did the role. Would you have come back if you were able to? I know that they were filming in Canada, so you were unable to do it. Was that the story?
Well, I wasn't. It's not that I was unable to do it. It's that there's a couple things here. Let me unpack it for you. The first is that each successive film has had kind of different producers and a different production doing it. And when you have different people, they tend to hire their own people. That's the first thing that happens there. And Brad, when I saw him, when I first met him, great guy by the way, but when I first met him, he's like, "Were you mad that they didn't bring you back?" And I go, honestly, if I was mad at that, then I should be mad that Nick didn't play him the whole time. Okay, so there's that. You can't, the fact that they weren't loyal in that regard or had one production company continually doing these is what benefited me, to get the role. No, I was available to go. It would have been fun to do, but it was a local setup, and they weren't going to bring anyone. They hired local. The thing with this franchise that's been frustrating is that they kind of, through the years, have assumed that Michael is generic and replaceable.
Right.
And I think that's entirely wrong. And I think most of the fans would agree that's entirely wrong. But that's how they viewed it. And I was working on H2O, and I had a bunch of the crew complimenting me, saying, "Listen, if something happens to you, we're screwed because of what you're doing. If you're pulling this off the way you're doing it, etc." And I turned to him and I said, "Listen, I really appreciate the thought. If something happens to me, somebody else will be in the mask tomorrow." They don't care. Right? They don't see it. And so it was never kind of on their radar. And I think with that goes another underlying thing is they don't want someone to gain traction. Because if you gain traction, then you start demanding more. And I think that was another element of the whole thing. So, it is what it is. I learned in this business a long time ago not to take things personally. There were times when you get your hopes up because you go, "Oh, there's a big job coming up," and you hear about 8 things, and 5 of them would never materialize, and 2 would be canceled, and you'd get 1, and you'd get 2 other jobs that you'd never heard of. It's just how it goes.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I can definitely get that. But you would have returned if it was offered.
Yeah, I think so. The thing, well, this is the rest of that answer is, of all the ones to do other than the original, I think I pretty much, especially at the time, I got the one to do. Because I had an all-star cast and I had Jamie. So, it's kind of hard to argue. Right? It's a little bit hard to argue with that. I really had the right setup. So with that in mind, it's tough to go if they've dropped the budget and changed the cast and, kind of rethought how they're doing it and dialed it back again.
Right.
You know what I mean? So I've always said it'd be fun to do, but, I want to do it right. You don't want to come back and do it to a lesser degree.
Absolutely, no, I definitely understand. Following with Halloween H2O again, I'm a big Halloween fan, so this is kind of going to be a big portion of this meeting we're doing or interview we're doing. But so the masks, what was up with all those masks? Like, why couldn't someone just pick a mask and use it? I really like the opening scene.
That's a real good question. It's the frustrating question, I think, of this whole thing. So when we first were prepping, we actually did a photo shoot day, like a test shoot, with all of the different masks, trying them all on and lining them all up so that they could make a decision. And then they decided to make the mask that they made. And, generally speaking, you finish filming, and the next day or two, they've developed the film and they're showing everybody dailies, or the directors and producers are watching the dailies to make sure they've got footage they want. And you would have thought in that portion of it that they would have gone, we don't like this mask, let's switch. They didn't. So don't know what their thinking was to wait so long. But we got literally halfway through, and we were shooting in kind of the beginning of the film. We'd already done the exterior of the house killing the nurse, and then now it was the interior portion. And that's when it hit the fan on a Friday. Oops, hang on, let me decline that. Okay, sorry.
No problem.
It hit the fan on a Friday, and we shot that scene with two different masks. I think it was the one from, I'll probably get it wrong. There was 5 or 6, I forget.
Yeah, part 6, the opening, the first mask you see in the film.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we shot that with the mask we'd used the whole time and with 6. We shot it with both because Steve was fighting them at that point because we'd shot so much of the film. And by Monday we had a new mask, and we reshot a bunch of scenes. And the far scenes, they kept the footage that we had used, and all of the stuff like flipping the tables in the closet and stuff we had to reshoot. So it's a little disheartening to have to do that because, you get what's called happy accidents in film.
Mm-hmm.
Those little gym moments that happen that are not planned, that they just unfold in just the perfect way, and you're like, oh, we got this little great piece of footage, and of course you lose those because you got to reshoot, and you're never going to recapture those. Hopefully you get new ones. But the other thing is you got to get your energy up even more because, it's still got to be done. You got to pull the scene off, refilm it or not. And listen, for me, that's my background. I didn't care about that, right? It was hard for the crew because they had to reset things that they'd already done. But for me, it's like if you redo it, you redo it. And so I just did what I thought was right again, and just you bring up the energy and you do it and you go for it. And then there's this one scene, which is, I guess, the considered the CGI mask.
Mm-hmm.
And what that actually is the original mask. And we didn't reshoot that scene, obviously, coming up. And so I think they just did a digital overlay onto the mask, and if you see it kind of floats for a second, and you're like, they just didn't do a very good job of it at the time.
Yeah, 1998 CGI, it's not the best.
No, exactly. So that's what that is. But really, there was the mask from 6, and then the original one we shot with, and then what we ended up with. And what we ended up with is my favorite. I think it was the right choice. I just wish we'd have done it, in week 1.
Yeah. So you were saying that there's a big chunk of filming you did with the wrong mask. Would you say that there could be almost a full movie with the wrong mask as a movie with just all these alternate scenes?
Well, it's not alternate scenes. It's scenes that we did, but it's the main ones we really had to reshoot were things like the tables and some of the kitchen stuff, and what else was it? There's just a few things, but otherwise, shots that were longer shots, they were able to use them still because it's far enough away. Or, they can modify things and change the lighting a little bit, and it's close enough because it's so far in the distance, right? But there's enough footage out there with the versions with the other masks.
Yeah, it's funny because it's 1998, so they have the faraway scenes, and they think they're going to get away with it, but now we're in 2020, and we see these films on Blu-ray, and it's like, oh, I can definitely tell that's not the right mask.
Right. But that's, again, if you look at any old movie, you kind of cringe, and you go, okay, the CG has gotten so amazing now.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah, absolutely.
The problem with the CG, I think, it's a whole different discussion, but I think they've taken it too far too many times, so it becomes unreal. And taking it back to Halloween, the reason I think that Halloween works is because it's basic and raw.
Right. No, exactly. I just have just a few more things for you, then I'll let you go. Won't eat up too much of your time. It's Friday night. What was your experience like on Scream? Scream 2?
Scream was funny because I had actually read for Wes to be one of the two cops, and one of the guys is a buddy of mine, and he's got kind of rougher skin, like more pocked, acne skin, and so he has a real good character look.
Mm-hmm.
And Wes liked it when I read, but then he gave it to a buddy. So, kind of hard to argue with that. His film, he can do what he wants, right?
Right, exactly.
But then he was very, very sweet. And I actually, on that, played Ghostface, but I doubled one of the other guys as a scene where he gets lower down on stage on a cross, just like in his shorts or something. And coming down on the cross is me.
Oh, really?
Oh, like up from the perms all the way down is me. And then they punched in to get to him for the rest of that stuff with the scene. I don't even remember who it was. And it's been so long since I've seen that. In any case, yeah, that was fun. But he was very, very nice man, very sweet, kind of very personable, and loved what he was doing and loved everybody. So I had a funny scene when I was trying to bust out the door. I threw Sarah Michelle Gellar out, and then I had to follow her out and bust through. And what he wanted me to do, he was on a big crane on the outside from that camera, and there was interior cameras. And what he wanted me to do was to throw her through the breakaway and then back up a couple steps. So I chucked Sarah Michelle Gellar through the doors in a big pile of glass. I have to back up about 3 feet so they can kind of reset the camera for just a beat, and then he gets a cleaner shot of me coming and busting through and chasing her. And I had there was the door frame that was balsa wood, and so as she went through the glass, I back up. He did second cue. I come charging through, and I'm going to bust out some of the wood, but they didn't score it well enough, so I slammed into it and bounced off and fell on my butt. So somewhere there's footage of that.
Oh, that's awesome.
And then I, got up, like scrambled to my feet, and boogied out the door anyway. Kept it going. And Wes was just like, "That was very human of you." It's like, yeah, thanks, man. And of course, that's kind of the point, though. Is that's how he liked things.
Mm.
And the sloppiness of it is what made that character work for Scream. Because it's not supposed to be slick. It's supposed to be one of them, chasing people and trying to kill them.
Right, clumsy almost, yeah.
Right, exactly. So
that's awesome. So I hear from from watching interviews and things like that. Every actor always says Wes is the sweetest guy. He cares about the people who are on set, and he cares about everyone, and loves everyone, and that's why I think like he's absolutely one of my favorite horror directors, if not my favorite horror director, or director in general. He just comes off as genuine and just a lovely person. So that's really cool. So you actually did Scream. So you were a stunt double throughout the entire production. No. What we did is actually Wes put on that thing as well. But no, we mixed up Ghostface between 3 of us to throw everybody off. And the thinking was that you don't want to clue into one kind of movement that might match, one of the actors more. Right.
So, and then people would go, "It's got to be this guy because," right? And so we're trying to avoid that. Gotcha.
That makes sense. Absolutely.
Yeah, and that's the only reason. It was strictly kind of a technique to muddy the waters. And in reality, though, it didn't matter terribly because, for me anyway, the robe is so flowing that it was kind of hard to clue into anybody anyway.
Right.
So, but I understood, the thinking is the thinking, and you go for it.
Exactly. That's awesome, man. Yeah, like I said, I won't eat up too much of your time. So moving. I mean, lastly, is there anything you have planned for the future? Are you kind of just settling down and living with the having family time and home life and things like that?
Well, right now we're all kind of having that.
Yeah, yeah. Technically, yeah. Well, yeah, we are.
Yeah, we're all a little bit stuck at the moment. No, I'm working on a book right now.
Nice.
I started doing this documentary some years ago, and we got stalled for a variety of reasons, but mostly because we couldn't quite get all the footage we needed.
Right.
But we had it on one of the women, and so um, what we decided to do is to shift gears and do a smaller documentary on just her. And at the same time, I've been writing her book. So they should both be done. I'm pretty far into the book. I'm probably 80% done. So I'm going to try in the next year to get that finished up, and I'm also trying to get the documentary edited, but I'm doing it. So it's kind of a double-ended thing. I'm, burning the candle both ends here. But it's an amazing story. She's an acid attack survivor, and I won't tell you much more than that, but just an amazing woman who's just a real warrior.
That sounds like a really deep story. And you said this is looking to release in about a year or so?
Well, the book has got to happen before we do anything else. And
okay.
That's what we're doing now. So, and then the documentary, we'll see. The documentary I'll probably try to push out, hopefully with the book. And they can kind of play at the same time, if you will. I think if people read the book and get interested in her story, they're going to want to see her, and vice versa. So the idea is kind of to push them both out.
That's really cool. I'm going to keep my eyes open for that. I'm actually very curious. Those stories are, man, they're terrible, man. So I'm very interested what you got going on, and that sounds really, really intriguing, man.
Yeah, it's a rough one.
Yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
It's not a happy story.
No.
It's for lack of a better word, it's a real life horror story. I mean, it's the worst of the worst kind of stuff. But she's fought through and made it all work.
And that's
pretty amazing. And hopefully someday we can do a film with that as well. In the meantime, I've got a whole bunch of scripts I've been writing for a while, and I'm hopefully going to get some funding at some point here. I've got a couple irons in the fire. We'll see what happens. But it'd be great. Try to get something off the ground, and
Yeah, absolutely.
I'll be at the other side of it.
Do you plan on doing stunts anytime soon, or are you kind of that's kind of no more for you? You're kind of over it. You want to move on to a different.
I still work. I still do both.
Okay.
Whatever the work happens to be. One of the things you learn with stunts, it's really interesting, kind of compared to what most people think about this business or do in this business, and that is that we really don't have our ego in it.
Mm-hmm.
You can't afford to with stunts. What you're doing is potentially life-threatening sometimes, and other times it's still bad enough that it can bang you up. So you got to pay attention. You can't goof off at that stuff. So, kind of with that in mind, I'm still doing things, but there's probably smaller stuff now.
Mm-hmm.
And I was going to say also, I'm sorry, is that with the stunts you realize some days you're the guy and some days you're the support, right?
Right.
And as an actor, I've never gotten into that big ego thing. I still look at it as sometimes you're the guy, sometimes you're, the background guy, the thug, and sometimes you're doubling somebody to make the scene work. So to me, it's never been about being, the actor and that whole thing. It's about being a filmmaker and a storyteller. And that's really what it's about to me. And that's what hopefully we'll keep doing. But I just did, what did I work on? I just worked on, I'm trying to think what these call it. It's called a Quibi. Little quick bits with Adam Devine doing a little Western bar fight where we beat him up, and then worked on the 911 for Lone Star 911 thing. Just that was a safety-ish thing when I was in for safety because you had a bunch of fire going on.
Oh wow!
And then I just did a thing doubling on Lucifer.
Oh, nice.
which was really fun. But I guess that's not coming back. I guess that's done now. So I slid in before it was done.
Right. Wow. Was that throughout the season? Like, was it a few episodes?
No, just the episode, probably right when this whole thing was starting to go down.
Oh.
Probably one of the last episodes.
Gotcha.
Because I think they're canceling it now. They're going to be done.
Oh wow. Yeah. I think I have to assume they're gonna, after all everything that's going on. Well, were they going to cancel because of this? What's going on with the coronavirus?
I don't think it was because of this. I think it was just that they're there and they're done.
Gotcha.
And they've gotten far enough along, and now it's kind of like, I think what's going on with the coronavirus is that it's kind of pushing that last button, and people are pulling the plug, going, okay, well, we were kind of done, and now I guess this is our sign we're done. Sometimes it's kind of the excuse that, like, we were going to stop anyway, and now's the perfect time, because what are we going to do? Fight through this and then, try to come back and then be done? Right? Sometimes it's just that last push where they just go, I guess this is it. We thought we were going to be done, and now we're done.
Yeah, it's kind of like perfect timing for them, I guess.
Yeah, in a sense, it's fortuitous in that wrong way.
Man, well, I want to say thank you so much for taking the time. I know we've been trying to get to do this for a while, since last summer, and but it's great to finally do it. Get to know you, kind of know who you are a little bit more, other than the interviews I watch you on Halloween H20 and things like that. And hearing it directly from your voice is wonderful, because now I feel like this has created a new experience for me. This is my first time doing something like this, and I hope it's not my last. But I can tell you that this one's been really great, and it's been great to get to know you.
Well, awesome, man. Thank you. And thank you for taking the time, being patient. Sometimes it's hard to get there.
Absolutely, man. Well, you're a busy man. You have a family. You're writing a book. You want to get things off the ground. You have your stunt work, man. You're a busy guy. So I appreciate you taking the time and doing this. This means a lot.
Well, my pleasure. And let me know what's going on with this when you post it.
Absolutely, I will definitely tag you in the post, and it's probably gonna go on my YouTube, and it's gonna go on my YouTube for sure. But yeah, I'll let you know for sure.
Perfect, man.
All right. Well, thank you so much. You have a great weekend.
You too. Have a good night.
Thanks. Bye.